What is Canadian whiskey and what makes it so Canadian? Well, there's a legal definition that whiskey producers need to meet by in Canada, and that states that it needs to be distilled and aged in Canada, but doesn't have to be bottled here. And when it's aged, it has to be aged for at least 3 years and in small wood. Small wood being a wood container of any kind and less than 700 liters. And the whiskey has to be made from grains. It doesn't matter which grains it's distilled from. And that's pretty much it. There's a few other rules in there that we have to meet, but nothing all that important. So with this wide open slate, why does Canadian whiskey have a general identity? And this is based on history, of course. Pre-Prohibition in Canada, we used rye. That's why rye whiskey became synonymous with Canadian whiskey. And when you go to the bar and ask for a rye and Coke, you get a Canadian whiskey and Coke. But during Prohibition in the United States, Canadian whiskey producers changed to corn. Corn has more sugar, so it has more alcohol capacity, and it's cheaper. Over the next few years during Prohibition, the Americans developed a taste for it, and we never switched back once it ended. So now Canadian whiskey is mainly corn-based, but we don't have mash bills. We don't distill corn, barley, wheat, and rye all together like a bourbon would. We age them and distill them and ferment them and mash them all separately. So we'll mash a corn whiskey and then we'll age it in a barrel that's just corn whiskey. And we'll do the same where a barrel just has barley whiskey in it. And this is thought to bring out the maximum characteristics of each of the individual grains, maximize those flavors, and then when we bring them together, we get the best of multiple worlds. Canadian whiskey is the art of blending by bringing all these different whiskeys together and creating something unique after the maturation has occurred. But we also use a base whiskey and a flavoring whiskey. Now this base whiskey is distilled to a very high alcohol proof, removes a lot of the grain flavor, a lot of the yeast flavor, and will only bring in the flavors from the wood in the maturation process. And that's what makes Canadian whiskey so distinctly smooth and approachable, but doesn't bring a whole lot of flavor. We get the flavor from the flavoring whiskey, of course. And this flavoring whiskey is much more similar to bourbon, where it's still distilled to lower proof, and therefore we carry over more of those grain flavors and those yeast flavors into the final product. So when we blend this base whiskey and this flavoring whiskey together, we get some really, really beautiful flavors, but we also get that smooth characteristic that Canadian whiskey is known for. Canadian whiskey is the art of the blend, and that's what makes Canadian whiskey so Canadian. I hope you learned something, and stay tuned for next time. Enjoy.